she mocked. Why can't you be more like that guy? I stopped trying altogether. Now she's stuck with a man who tears her down, while I'm cherished every day. Looking back, I can pinpoint exactly when everything started falling apart, though I didn't recognize it at the time. I'm Marcus, 32, and I work as a guidance counselor at Lincoln High School. It's not glamorous, but I love helping kids navigate their futures, watching them discover their potential. I'd been with Jessica for 5 years, and I thought we were building something solid, something real. Then Tyler moved in next door. Tyler was everything I wasn't: flashy, loud, always talking about his tech startup and the latest luxury car he'd leased. The comparisons started at our first neighborhood barbecue last summer. Tyler just got back from Dubai, Jessica mentioned casually while I flipped burgers. Must be nice to travel like that. I shrugged it off. We'd just taken a camping trip to the state park, which I thought she'd enjoyed. But the comments kept coming. Tyler's taking Vanessa to that new 5-star restaurant downtown. Did you see Tyler's watch? Rolex, apparently. Tyler says real success means multiple income streams. I noticed her scrolling through his social media constantly, double-tapping photos of expensive dinners and designer shopping bags. Meanwhile, I spent my weekends renovating our backyard, building raised garden beds and a pergola because Jessica once mentioned wanting a cozy outdoor space. When I finished, she barely looked up from her phone. That's nice, Marcus. Kind of quaint, though, isn't it? Quaint. That word stung more than I wanted to admit. I was giving her thoughtful gestures, but she wanted grand displays of wealth I couldn't provide on a teacher's salary. I spent 2 months planning Jessica's 30th birthday, wanting to make it perfect. I created an elaborate scavenger hunt through our city, each stop representing a milestone in our relationship. The coffee shop where we had our first date, the park where I told her I loved her, the movie theater where we saw that terrible horror film and laughed through the whole thing. At each location, I'd hidden a handmade gift, a framed photo, a playlist of songs that reminded me of her, a letter describing what that moment meant to me. The final destination was the botanical gardens where we'd first kissed under the cherry blossoms. I'd reserved the gazebo and filled it with her favorite flowers. But from the very first clue, something felt off. Jessica kept checking her phone, scrolling through Instagram with this distant expression. Tyler just posted, she said at stop 3. He took Vanessa on a surprise helicopter ride to wine country for her birthday last month. Can you imagine? I tried to redirect her attention to the memory I was recreating, but she barely glanced at the photo collage I'd made. That's sweet, Marcus. Really? Not amazing, not thoughtful, not romantic. By the time we reached the botanical gardens, my excitement had curdled into dread. I presented the final gift, a custom leather-bound photo album chronicling our entire 5 years together. Every concert ticket, every silly selfie, every handwritten note. Hours of work, thousands of memories. Jessica flipped through it mechanically, her face blank. Then her phone buzzed. Oh my God, she gasped, staring at her screen. Tyler just posted. He bought Vanessa a BMW. A BMW, Marcus. For her birthday. I watched her face transform, envy, longing, and something that looked like disgust as she glanced at my carefully crafted album. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Why can't you be more like Tyler? The words exploded from her like she'd been holding them back for months. Why can't you have ambition? Why can't you want more than this pathetically ordinary life? I'm 30 years old, and what do I have to show for it? A boyfriend who thinks scrapbooking is a grand gesture. Each word landed like a physical blow. I stood there among the roses I'd arranged, holding an album that suddenly felt worthless. You're so content being mediocre, she continued, her voice rising. A guidance counselor. Forever. No drive to advance, to build something bigger. Tyler's building an empire while you're helping teenagers fill out college applications. Do you know how embarrassing that is when people ask what my boyfriend does? Something inside me went quiet and cold. I see, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. Then you should go pursue the life you actually want. You're free, Jessica. Her face changed instantly, shock, then panic. Wait, what? Marcus, I didn't mean, but I was already walking away, pulling out my phone to call a rideshare. Behind me, I heard her heels clicking on the stone path as she chased after me. Marcus. Marcus, stop. I was just frustrated. Don't be so sensitive. I didn't turn around. I blocked her number as the car pulled up, and by the time she reached the parking lot, I was gone. Through the window, I saw her standing there alone in her expensive dress, surrounded by all those roses, finally getting the drama she seemed to crave. I drove straight to my sister Rachel's house, showed up at her door with nothing but my wallet and phone. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without questions. For 2 days, I stayed in her guest room and systematically dismantled my life with Jessica. I changed every password she knew, canceled the joint streaming services I'd been paying for, transferred my portion of utilities into my name only. I documented everything in a spreadsheet, every shared expense, every item I'd purchased for our apartment, every financial entanglement that needed untangling. Rachel's husband Derek, a lawyer, helped me review our lease. "You're being smart about this," he said, looking over the documents. "Most people make emotional decisions and regret them later. But this wasn't emotional. This was the most clear-headed I'd felt in months." On day 3, I returned to the apartment with Rachel as my witness. Jessica's car was in the driveway. She'd probably been camping out, waiting for me. The moment I walked through the door, she launched herself at me, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus. Thank God. I've been so worried. You can't just disappear like that." I stepped aside, letting her momentum carry her past me. "I'm here to collect my things. Rachel's going to help me pack." "Pack?" "Marcus, no, we need to talk about this." Her voice pitched higher, that familiar manipulation creeping in. "I was having a bad day." "You're overreacting to one bad day." I pulled out my phone and opened the Notes app where I'd been documenting her comparisons for the past 6 months. June 15th, Tyler would never make me drive a car this old. July 2nd, maybe I should date someone with actual career goals. August 23rd, Tyler's girlfriend doesn't have to worry about money. Should I continue? Her face went white. "You've been keeping a list?" September 4th, I continued, my voice level. "You told Tyler at his barbecue that my job was cute but not exactly impressive." September 18th, you suggested I was wasting my potential. October 2nd, stop. Okay, stop. She was crying harder now, mascara running down her cheeks. "So I was frustrated sometimes. Couples complain. That doesn't mean anything." I pulled out my phone again, this time opening a voice recording. Her voice filled the room, crystal clear from 2 weeks ago when she thought I was asleep. "I mean, he's nice and stable, but is that enough? Tyler says I'm too beautiful to settle. Maybe I should just stay until someone better comes along." The color drained completely from Jessica's face as she heard her own words played back. She looked between me and Rachel, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Marcus, I didn't mean." "You did mean it," I said quietly. "And that's fine. But I'm not waiting around to be settled for." I handed her an envelope. Inside was an itemized list of shared expenses, her half of everything I'd covered for the past 3 months because she was saving for something special. Total, $2,347. I expect payment within 30 days. Also, I'm breaking the lease. You have 30 days to find a new place or take over the full rent. "You can't just leave me," she shrieked, her tears turning to rage. "After 5 years, you're going to throw everything away because I hurt your feelings?" "No," I said, already heading to the bedroom to pack. "I'm leaving because you showed me exactly how little I meant to you. There's a difference." She followed me, alternating between sobbing apologies and screaming accusations, but I moved through the apartment like a ghost, collecting my belongings with mechanical precision. Rachel stood guard, quietly documenting everything with her phone in case Jessica tried to claim I'd stolen anything. The final blow came when I handed Jessica the keys. "I'll have my name removed from everything by end of week. My lawyer will be in touch about the lease." "Your lawyer?" Her voice cracked. "Marcus, please, I love you. I was just scared about the future, about money, about having to actually contribute instead of just criticizing. I finished. Goodbye, Jessica. As I walked out with my boxes, I heard her collapse on the couch, wailing dramatically. But I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, if she'd ever really existed at all. What remained was just someone who'd worn her face while waiting for a better offer. The first week after leaving Jessica, I felt like I'd been holding my breath for years and could finally exhale. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town, nothing fancy, but it was mine. No more walking on eggshells, no more comparing myself to Tyler or anyone else. Just me, figuring out who I was without someone's disappointment pressing down on my shoulders. I enrolled in evening MBA classes at the community college, something I'd wanted to do for years but Jessica had dismissed as pointless since I wasn't going to use it anyway. Turns out I loved it. Strategy, organizational behavior, financial management. I devoured every lecture like I was starving. My professor, Dr. Williams, pulled me aside after class one night. "You've got a real aptitude for this, Marcus. Ever considered educational administration?" I hadn't, but suddenly the idea of becoming a principal, of shaping entire school systems instead of just guiding individual students, lit something up inside me. I joined a cycling club that met Saturday mornings, riding through the city as the sun came up. Jessica had always complained that cycling was boring and sweaty, so I'd stopped. Now, pedaling through empty streets with a group of friendly strangers, I remembered why I'd loved it. The burn in my legs, the wind on my face, the simple joy of movement. I started volunteering at a youth mentorship program on Tuesday evenings, working with at-risk kids who needed guidance beyond what school could offer. One kid, Dishon, reminded me why I'd chosen this profession in the first place. "Mr. Marcus," he said after our session, "you actually listen. Most adults just talk at us." That validation meant more than any compliment Jessica had ever given me. I picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned to make time for her endless social calendar. Painting, terrible abstract pieces that looked like a kindergartner's finger paintings, but they made me happy. Guitar, I was learning through YouTube videos, fumbling through basic chords in my living room. I even started going to open mic nights at a coffee shop downtown, just to watch, soaking in the courage it took for people to share their art. That's where I met Grace. She was a volunteer at the same mentorship program, though our schedules hadn't overlapped until the organization's monthly mixer. Grace was a veterinarian, mid-30s, with laugh lines around her eyes and dirt perpetually under her fingernails from her work. She dressed practically, drove a 10-year-old Subaru, and had this way of making everyone around her feel seen. "You work with Deshaun, right?" she asked, sitting down next to me at the mixer. "That kid talks about you constantly. Says you're teaching him to believe in himself." We talked for 3 hours that night about our work, our dreams, our frustrations with systems that failed kids who needed them most. Not once did she ask about my salary or my car or compare me to anyone else. She was fascinated by my MBA studies, asking thoughtful questions about how I'd apply business principles to education. "That's brilliant," she said when I explained my ideas for restructuring student services. "The school system needs more people who think like you." I felt myself unfurling like a plant that had been kept in the dark too long. 3 months after the breakup, I got called into Principal Henderson's office. My heart raced. Had Jessica done something? Filed some complaint? But Henderson was smiling. "Marcus, I'm retiring at the end of the year. I've recommended you for the assistant principal position. It comes with a significant raise and puts you on track for administration." I sat there, stunned. Jessica had nagged me for years about advancement, about ambition, about being more. And now, without her constant criticism, without trying to prove anything to anyone, it was happening naturally. The raise was $42,000 annually. I didn't call Jessica. Didn't post about it. Didn't need external validation. I called Rachel, who screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear, and then I took Grace to our favorite taco truck to celebrate. "You earned this," Grace said, squeezing my hand across the plastic picnic table. "Not because you changed who you are, but because you're finally free to be yourself fully." My friends noticed the transformation. Man, you're like a different person, my buddy James said at poker night. You're actually fun again. When's the last time you made a joke? Jessica would have shut that down in seconds. He was right. I was lighter, funnier, more present. The weight of Jessica's perpetual disappointment had been crushing me, and I hadn't even realized it until it was gone. I was becoming someone I actually liked, not someone molded by another person's impossible standards, but authentically, messily, happily myself. I heard about Jessica and Tyler through our mutual friend Sophie, who texted me one afternoon, "You're not going to believe this. Jessica's with Tyler now. Like, officially dating." I stared at the message, waiting for the gut punch of jealousy or regret. Nothing came. Just a mild curiosity about how long it would take for her to realize Tyler wasn't the prize she'd imagined. "Good for them," I texted back. Sophie called immediately. "That's it? Good for them? Marcus, she left you for him." "She left me because she wanted something I couldn't give her. Hope she finds it." 3 weeks later, Sophie called again, this time with urgency in her voice. Okay, so I ran into Jessica at Target. She looked terrible. Like, genuinely terrible. I asked if she was okay and she practically burst into tears in the cleaning supplies aisle. Apparently, Tyler had shown his true colors quickly. Within 2 weeks of dating Jessica, he demanded she quit her marketing job because he wanted her available when he needed her. He claimed successful men's girlfriends didn't work. They focused on looking good and being supportive. Jessica, desperate to prove this was the upgrade she'd wanted, actually did it. Then the controlling behavior escalated. Tyler monitored her phone, criticized her appearance constantly, and humiliated her at social gatherings. "I saw them at Miller's restaurant last week," Sophie continued. Tyler was berating her in front of everyone because she suggested splitting the appetizer bill. Called her a gold digger, said she was lucky he even dated someone at her level. Marcus, she was crying into her salad. I felt a flash of sympathy, but it was distant, like feeling bad for a stranger. That's awful. She should leave him. She won't. She's convinced herself this is what she wanted. A successful, ambitious man who takes charge. The next update came from James, who worked in commercial real estate. "Dude, you dodged a nuclear missile. Tyler's company is completely fake. He's got no investors, no revenue, everything's smoke and mirrors. He's leveraged to his eyeballs. Those cars are leased at predatory rates. His house is rented. He's got 6 maxed out credit cards. The guy's a fraud living on borrowed time and borrowed money." I thought about Jessica's obsession with Tyler's lifestyle, how she'd sacrificed everything real for the illusion of success. The irony was almost poetic. 2 months after they started dating, Sophie sent me screenshots. Tyler had dumped Jessica via text. "You're not hot enough to be this broke. I thought you had money saved. You're basically useless to me. Lose my number." The follow-up message was even worse. "Also, you're bad in bed and your laugh is annoying. Blocked." Jessica had been evicted from Tyler's apartment the same day. He'd literally put her belongings in garbage bags on the curb. She'd lost her job because she'd been calling in sick constantly, spending whole days crying about their relationship. Her savings were gone, blown on designer clothes and expensive dinners trying to keep up with Tyler's fake lifestyle. "She's living with her mom now," Sophie said quietly. "In that tiny apartment an hour outside the city. She's applying for retail jobs because no marketing firm will hire her after she quits so abruptly. Her mom's furious, keeps asking how she went from having a stable boyfriend with a good job to being 30 and unemployed, living on her childhood twin bed." I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. "I hope she gets back on her feet," I said and meant it. Not because I wanted her back, but because watching someone self-destruct wasn't satisfying, it was just sad. Meanwhile, Grace and I were getting serious. She met Rachel, who immediately pulled me aside and whispered, "Oh my God, she's perfect for you. Don't screw this up." Grace laughed at my terrible jokes, got excited about my MBA projects, and showed up to my open mic debut where I butchered a cover of Wonderwall, but she cheered like I was a rock star. "You know what I love about you?" she said one night, curled up on my couch. You're content with building something meaningful instead of just chasing what looks impressive. You value substance over flash. I kissed her forehead, thinking about how Jessica had called that exact quality pathetic and unambitious. One person's deal-breaker was another person's dream come true. The universe worked in mysterious ways. Jessica's campaign to win me back started exactly 3 weeks after Tyler dumped her. The first call came at midnight from an unknown number. I was already asleep, curled up next to Grace after a movie night. Marcus? Marcus, please don't hang up. It's Jessica. I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need to talk to you. I made such a huge mistake. Tyler was awful, everything was a lie, and I realize now that you were the only good thing in my life. I hung up and blocked the number. The next day, 3 more calls from different numbers. I blocked them all. Then she escalated. She showed up at Lincoln High, waiting by my car after school. Security had to escort her off campus when she refused to leave. You can't just ignore me, she screamed as Officer Davis walked her to the gate. We had 5 years together. That means something. I filed for a restraining order that afternoon. My lawyer, Derek's colleague Amanda, was blunt. Document everything. Every call, every message, every appearance. This is harassment. Jessica's mother Patricia called next, her voice tight with forced politeness. Marcus, I know things ended badly, but Jessica's having a complete breakdown. She's not eating, barely sleeping. She needs closure. As her boyfriend of 5 years, don't you feel some responsibility for her well-being? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice level. Patricia, I was her boyfriend. Past tense. Jessica made her choices. She left me for someone she perceived as better. Those choices led to consequences. Her well-being is not my responsibility. You're being cruel. She's suffering. She's suffering from her own decisions. I'm sorry she's struggling, but calling me won't change anything. She needs professional help, not me. Patricia hung up on me. The harassment continued through social media. Jessica created fake profiles to monitor my life. Mike Davidson requested to follow me on Instagram. Sarah Thompson tried to connect on LinkedIn. Grace found them immediately. Babe, look at this, she said, showing me her phone. Jessica had sent her a series of messages claiming I'd been texting her, wanting to get back together. That Grace was the other woman. The screenshots were obviously photoshopped. Wrong font, different colored message bubbles, my profile picture from 2 years ago. Grace and I laughed together at the amateur forgery work. She's really desperate, Grace said, shaking her head. Should I respond? Nah, she's just trying to get a reaction. Let's go get ice cream instead. But Jessica's desperation reached its peak at Rachel's wedding. I was walking Grace to our seats when I heard a commotion at the entrance. Jessica had somehow gotten past security, dressed inappropriately in a tight white dress that could only be interpreted as an attempt to upstage the bride. She spotted me across the room and her face lit up with manic determination. Marcus, she shrieked, pushing through the crowd. Marcus, wait. I need to talk to you. Everyone turned to stare as she ran toward me, heels clicking on the marble floor. I instinctively stepped in front of Grace, shielding her. Jessica, you need to leave. Now. No. Not until you hear me out. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in desperately. I'm pregnant. It's yours. You can't abandon your own child. The entire reception hall went silent. I looked at her, really looked at her. The desperation in her eyes, the trembling hands, the way she couldn't quite meet my gaze. She was lying and badly. Jessica, we broke up 4 months ago and haven't seen each other since. If you're pregnant, which I doubt, it's definitely not mine. It is. I've been pregnant for 3 months. We were together then. We weren't together 3 months ago. Try again. Rachel's husband Derek appeared with 2 security guards. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately or we're calling the police. Marcus, please. Jessica's voice rose to a shriek as the guards took her arms. I love you. I made a mistake. Don't throw away our future. There is no future, I said quietly. There hasn't been one since you chose Tyler over me. You need to move on, Jessica. Get help. As security escorted her out, she was screaming about how I'd regret this, how I was making the biggest mistake of my life, how no one would ever love me like she did. Her voice echoed through the hall until the doors finally closed behind her. I turned to find 200 wedding guests staring at me in various states of shock and curiosity. Grace squeezed my hand, her face calm and supportive. Rachel walked over, her wedding dress swishing. "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I have no idea how she got in." "Not your fault," I said, giving my sister a hug. "Let's not let her ruin your day." The DJ, sensing the need to move past the awkwardness, started playing upbeat music. Within minutes, people were dancing, the drama already becoming the wedding story they'd tell for years. Grace pulled me onto the dance floor. "You okay?" she asked, her arms around my neck. "I'm perfect," I said and meant it. Over Grace's shoulder, I could see through the window where Jessica sat on the curb, mascara running, looking utterly defeated. Part of me felt sorry for her. But mostly, I just felt grateful I'd escaped when I did. We danced until my feet hurt, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, holding someone who saw my worth. Jessica's drama couldn't touch that. 6 months after Rachel's wedding, I stood in the Lincoln Community Center ballroom accepting an award for my work with at-risk youth. The mentorship program had grown significantly under my guidance. We'd helped 43 kids get into college, secured scholarships totaling over $200,000, and reduced dropout rates by 18% in our district. Grace stood beside me in a simple navy dress, her hand resting on my back as Mayor Chen presented the plaque. "Marcus Rodriguez represents the best of our community," the mayor said. "He doesn't seek recognition or glory. He simply shows up every day and changes lives." The applause was thunderous. I caught Principal Henderson's eye in the crowd. She winked at me. My promotion to assistant principal had been announced last week, and I'd start in the fall. Everything I'd worked for was finally coming together, not because I'd chased it desperately, but because I'd focused on doing work that mattered. The reception afterward was full of colleagues, students, families I'd helped, and friends who'd supported me through the hardest year of my life. I was talking to Deshawn's mother about his acceptance to State University when I spotted her. Jessica stood near the punch bowl, looking completely out of place. She'd clearly tried to dress up, a cocktail dress that hung loose on her frame, suggesting weight loss she couldn't afford. But it was her expression that caught me, forced confidence barely masking desperation. Next to her stood a man in his 40s, balding, wearing an ill-fitting suit that had seen better days. He looked uncomfortable, checking his phone constantly while Jessica clung to his arm like a life raft. "Marcus." Jessica's voice cut through the crowd as she approached, dragging the man behind her. "Congratulations on your award. You remember Preston, right? My fiancé." I didn't remember Preston, but I extended my hand politely. "Nice to meet you. Congratulations on your engagement." Preston's handshake was limp, distracted. Jessica's smile was manic. "We're getting married in the spring. Preston's an accountant. Very stable, very responsible. Exactly what I need." The emphasis on responsible was clearly meant to convince herself more than me. Grace appeared at my side, sliding her arm through mine with easy affection. "Hi, I'm Grace, Marcus's girlfriend." Jessica's eyes flickered over Grace with barely concealed jealousy, taking in her genuine smile, the way I unconsciously leaned into her, the diamond studs in her ears that spoke of quiet wealth rather than desperate flash. "Yes, I've heard," Jessica said tightly. "Marcus mentioned you. You're a veterinarian?" "I am. Just opened my own practice, actually. It's been a dream of mine for years." "How nice." "Small animal practice. Mostly, though I do some exotic animal work on the side. There's a real need for it in the area." I watched Jessica calculate, trying to find an angle to prove her life was better. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Tyler had arrived, but not as a guest. He was wearing a server's uniform, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. Our eyes met across the room, and his face flushed with humiliation. The mighty tech entrepreneur, reduced to catering weddings and community events. Jessica's face went white. "Tyler? What are you, why are you, Tyler approached our group with visible reluctance, his jaw tight. Champagne? He offered, holding out the tray with shaking hands. Tyler's working here? Jessica's voice pitched higher. I thought you said your business was just going through a temporary setback. My business went bankrupt, Tyler said flatly. Turns out investors don't appreciate fraud. Lost everything. Declared bankruptcy 3 months ago. Preston was suddenly very interested in this conversation, his phone forgotten. Bankrupt? I thought you said, I'm getting back on my feet. Tyler cut him off, then looked at Jessica with unmistakable venom. Which is more than I can say for some people who tried to drag me down further. What's that supposed to mean? Jessica demanded. Tyler laughed, harsh and bitter. Should I tell them, Jessica? About how you begged me to take you back after I dumped you. How you offered to pay off my debts with money you didn't have. How you showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m. crying about how you'd ruined your life. Jessica's face went from white to crimson. That's not, you're lying. How you stalked me for 2 months? Called my mother? Tried to get me fired from this catering jobs. Tyler's voice rose with each accusation. I had to threaten a restraining order just to get you to leave me alone. Preston turned to Jessica, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. You told me you'd barely dated anyone before me. That your ex-boyfriend was obsessed with you and that's why you needed time to heal. Preston, he's exaggerating. You said you'd been focusing on your career. Preston's voice cracked. You told me you were a successful marketing executive taking a sabbatical. I had a job and then, she quit her job to be my trophy girlfriend, Tyler interjected with cruel satisfaction. Except she wasn't trophy enough. Not smart enough, not pretty enough, not rich enough. She was just desperately clingy and completely delusional about what she brought to the table. The crowd around us had grown silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. Jessica looked around wildly, seeing the judgment in every face, the pity, the schadenfreude. Preston, please, let me explain. You used me, Preston said quietly, stepping away from her. You saw a stable guy with a job and thought you'd found your safety net. That's what he called you, right? He gestured at me. Her financial safety net? I'd never told Preston that, which meant Jessica had. She'd literally told her new fiancé that she viewed men as financial resources. Preston pulled the ring off her finger, a modest band that had probably represented his life savings. We're done. Lose my number. He walked away, leaving Jessica standing there alone, exposed and humiliated in front of everyone who'd witnessed her downfall. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face, all pretense finally shattered. Marcus, I destroyed everything. Tyler was a lie, Preston was a mistake, everything I thought I wanted was just empty. You were the only man who actually loved me, who saw me as more than just a pretty face or a status symbol. I threw away something real for an illusion and now I have nothing. Her voice broke completely. I wake up every day in my childhood bedroom, working retail for minimum wage, and I think about the life we could have had. The backyard you built, the scrapbooks you made, the way you planned that birthday scavenger hunt. You loved me genuinely and I spat on it because I was too stupid to see that real love isn't about expensive cars or fancy restaurants. It's about someone who shows up, who cares, who builds something with you instead of just using you. Grace squeezed my hand, giving me space to respond. I looked at Jessica, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd finally learned the lesson but far too late. Jessica, I said quietly, I hope you find someone who makes you want to be better, not someone who makes you feel lesser. But that person will never be me again. You didn't just break my heart. You made me feel worthless, unambitious, pathetic. It took me months to rebuild my self-worth after you finished tearing it down. I know, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I accept your apology. But I don't forgive you. And I definitely don't want you back. I turned to Grace, who was watching me with those understanding eyes. Ready to head out? We've got that cabin reservation, and I want to beat the traffic. Absolutely, Grace smiled, already moving toward the exit. As we walked away, I heard Jessica's sobs behind us, but I didn't look back. In the parking lot, Grace stopped me before we reached my car. You know what I haven't told you about myself? What's that? My grandmother left me a trust fund when she died. About $3 million. I blinked, processing this information. Rich? Independently wealthy, technically. But I live modestly because money has never been what makes me happy. Meaningful work, genuine relationships, simple pleasures, that's what matters to me. She studied my face carefully. Does that change anything? Only that I'm definitely letting you pay for gas this weekend, I joked, then turned serious. Grace, I fell for you because of who you are, your kindness, your passion for helping animals, the way you make me laugh. Your bank account doesn't change any of that. She kissed me right there in the parking lot, and I heard a sound behind us. Jessica had followed us out and stood frozen, watching this final reveal. The realization that Grace had everything Jessica had valued, wealth, status, success, but chose to live simply with a guidance counselor who built backyard gardens and made scrapbooks. The irony was almost poetic. We drove away as the sun set, heading toward the mountains for a weekend of laughter, terrible karaoke in the car, and the kind of simple joy that money could never buy. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Jessica standing alone in the parking lot, finally understanding exactly what she'd lost. Not my salary or my status or my potential for advancement. She'd lost someone who would have loved her unconditionally, who would have built a life with her brick by brick, who would have cherished her for who she was rather than what she could provide. She'd gambled on flash and lost everything real. I'd found someone who valued substance and won everything that mattered. The greatest victory wasn't her suffering, it was my happiness. And as Grace reached over to hold my hand, singing off-key to the radio while planning what trails we'd explore, I realized I'd never been more content, more loved, or more myself. Jessica had been right about one thing: I wasn't marriage material for her. But I was perfect for someone who actually deserved me.